So you come home after a long day and it's like, what are we gonna have for dinner tonight? I promise you, you can whip this up in no time. We're gonna start with a little bit of olive oil into a big soup pan. And this is one of the keys if you make a lot of soups and stews, a nice big soup pan. In fact, I got a soup pan as a wedding gift 20 some years ago, and I'm still using it now. Half of a cup of diced carrot and a half of a cup of diced onion. I just want to get that going. Most soups start out with some sort of onion and maybe carrots and celery, so I thought the carrots would be nice in here to kind of sweeten it up a little bit. I'm always putting together fun, different soup recipes. In my first cookbook, I had a recipe for lasagna soup and chicken parmesan soup. And in my new one, I put together a recipe for pizza soup, pumpkin soup, just some fun different soups. I really think soup after a long day is like a big hug. You know, it just makes everything feel all better. And Sunday is kind of my soup making day. So if I've got some extra time, I'll make a big kettle of soup and then, you know, a couple different casseroles. And then we've got food for the week. So if I know it's going to be a crazy busy week, no worries. I got it handled. We've got a kettle of soup in the refrigerator and some casseroles. And it's really kind of the way I roll. And I think it's a great way to get families back around the dinner table instead of going out to eat so much or everybody eating different meals. I mean, how many families actually eat dinner at the same time, but in completely different rooms of the house together? One's on, you know, watching video games and eating, the other one's doing Facebook, and mom's working on the computer. I think it's just sad. So I know it can't happen every night, but boy, if it can happen a few times a week, I think it makes such a big difference. I really believe magic happens at the dinner table, and it doesn't have to be a fancy dinner. It can just be a nice bowl of soup, and in this case, spaghetti and meatball soup with a little bit of garlic bread. All right, so my vegetables are starting to cook a little bit. And I'm going to drop some spaghetti, and this is something I always have in my pantry, or I try to, some sort of pasta. And I'm just going to break up the pasta so that it's a little easier to eat in this spaghetti and meatball soup. Just break it up into smaller pieces. It's also going to cook a little more quickly this way. And this is a fun one. Yeah, I got a little much pasta there. Anne's giving me the evil eye. She hates it when I make a mess. All right, there we go. Get it all in there. We got it in there. Okay. Season that water, that pasta water. I'm spilling everything today. We're just getting started, Anne. Whenever I'm making soup, Levi's right there with me in the kitchen, just waiting to see if anything might drop, anything good might drop, you know? When something good's going to drop. All right. So my onions and my carrots starting to get a little bit soft. Do a little bit of garlic in here. A couple cloves of fresh garlic. Or if you have the jarred garlic on hand, that would work fine too.
You know, spaghetti catches on fire. Other side here.
Oh, do we have some little spaghetti going? Next time I'll try and get it all in the pan. Okay, so I'm just giving my garlic a rough chop. If you have just jarred garlic in the refrigerator, that's going to work just fine too. And I'm always looking for new, fun, different soup recipes, so if you have any, please share. I'd love to hear about them. Okay, now once we get our garlic in, this is when you have to be right there. Don't walk away. Get it moving, moving, moving. 30 seconds or so. Just until you start to smell it. You don't want to burn the garlic, then you're going to get a bitter taste. And oh, it's starting to smell good. Now I'm going to actually pull it off the heat until we're ready for the rest of the ingredients. This is another thing I try and keep on hand in my pantry. A few jars of just whatever's on sale, your favorite spaghetti or marinara sauce. Not only great for spaghetti and meatballs, but I use it in lots of different soups. It's great for a minestrone soup, and perfect, obviously, for this spaghetti and meatball soup. Now, one of my tips and tricks is you've got all that sauce in the bottom of the jar. I hate letting things go to waste, so I just want to do a little water in the bottom of the jar, shake it up, and get every little last bit of that sauce out of there. There we go. Now we're going to add some chicken stock, and this is another thing that I like to keep on hand in my pantry. Boxes of chicken stock and beef stock, because if you're in the soup making business, if you're making a lot of soup, there's you know, nothing better. I don't have time to make my own homemade stock, and this box stock is really fantastic. Stock, I love to use the stock rather than the canned chicken broth or bouillon cubes that I grew up with. Is actually the real deal. And this actually happens to be unsalted too. They take basically the chicken and the bones and they cook it down, and you can just see it by looking at it, the color of it. In fact, let me show you the color of it. It's just such a beautiful color as opposed to the canned stuff, or the canned chicken broth. The stock is just, you can just see how rich it is. And they make it in a chicken stock, beef stock, vegetable stock, and seafood stock. So, you know, if you're doing a chowder, you'd want to go for like the seafood stock. You know, if you're doing vegetarian soups, you know, the vegetable stock. We're using chicken stock in this, and a lot of people say, you know, some of my recipes, why aren't you using beef stock? We're doing spaghetti and meatballs. Beef stock has a much stronger flavor. Chicken stock is just, it's going to be, instead of water, it's going to give it some great flavor and richness without overpowering the soup. So if you can, go for the stock rather than the broth and the bouillon cubes. And I love using the box that has the flip top, because you can take out what you need when you need it and then get this back in the refrigerator and it'll keep for a week or so. All right, so I'm just waiting for this to come to a boil. I'm going to add some Italian seasoning, just so it's more like spaghetti. A little bit of salt and pepper so we can control the amount of salt and pepper we use in here. And when you season a soup, it's really best to season as you go with salt and pepper, not just at the very end. I'm always kind of just tasting, hanging out when I'm doing this on a Sunday, just seeing how it is, a little more of this, a little more of that. Now we're going to cheat. For the spaghetti and meatball soup, this is another fun thing to have on hand in your freezer. These are just pre-made frozen meatballs. I also make you know, when I'm making homemade meatballs, I'll make a big batch, maybe double, triple the recipe, and then freeze them in individual Ziploc bags, and certainly you could do that. And then you can do so many different things with them. In fact, I had a whole new recipe in my new cookbook of a big batch of frozen meatballs, and then you can turn it into Swedish meatballs, meatball subs, a Mexican meatball soup, this spaghetti and meatball soup. So that's a great way to go. But if you don't have that on hand, and it's just a basic meatball recipe, but I love it because it makes a big batch, and I'm all about having certain things in your freezer. But anyway, if you don't have homemade meatballs in your freezer or on hand, in a pinch, these will work great, and you're just going to throw them in your soup. And they don't really even need to be thawed, because they're going to thaw out when they're cooking. We're just about at the finish line. I told you this was quick and easy. I don't want to overcook my pasta because it's going to go back in here. So I'm just going to give it a drain and then get it in the soup. And I think just about every kid I know likes spaghetti and meatballs, so pretty sure they're going to like this soup too. Get our pasta in here. This is just fun to eat. You can slurp away, serve it with. Another thing that I love to keep on hand is frozen garlic bread in the freezer, or you can make your own, certainly. So you've got stuff to dunk with. We're going to go ahead and throw all those noodles in there. Lots of noodles. And I told you this was quick. We literally have thrown this together in about 10 minutes. And we're done. They even have some leftovers for later in the week. Okay. So I just like to serve it in some nice soup bowls. Like I say, heat up some garlic bread for dunking. Got the carrots in there. Those great meatballs. Of course, the pasta. I don't know about you, but gotta have some Parmesan cheese on my spaghetti, don't you think, Anne?
Yes, ma'am.
And this is what the chefs do at the fancy restaurants, so don't be afraid of doing this. Before a plate goes out, they take a clean, wet rag and they just wipe around the edges so that you get a real clean look. I mean, for the family, the kids, they don't care, but. And then a little bit of fresh Parmesan cheese, just grated right on top. I know. Get ready to slurp away. You could even do a little fresh basil if you wanted to get fancy. Spaghetti and meatball soup, something fun and different for dinner this week. Quick fix. I really think the kids will love it too. Recipes on the website.